Well, folks, Democrats remain puzzled at why Donald Trump won re-election. Now, the answer for those of us who've been watching politics for the last 20 years is pretty obvious. You did it. Democrats, you did it. You decided to scorn the American people. You decided to label all the people in America who disagree with you bitter clingers and deplorables. You decided that going to church was a mark of your stupidity. You decided that Americans were in the cockles of their heart, racist, sexist, bigot, homophobes. You decided that all of the auspices of American government had to be brought to pressure Americans into your version of virtue, complete with signaling, like pronoun signaling and all the rest of this. And yet you seem absolutely puzzled as to why Americans aren't buying what you're selling. I'm not sure I've seen a better example of the sort of continued scorn that Democrats have for everyday Americans than what was exhibited last night on Mehdi Hasan's show. So Mehdi Hasan, for those who don't remember him, was an MSNBC host. He was terrible there. And then before that, he was an Al Jazeera host where he was a mouthpiece of Qatar. And he was joined on the air by the execrable Congresswoman from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, terror sympathizer extraordinaire. And there, she, with her vocal grind, decided to lay into the American people who have given her aid and sustenance. And remember, she was originally a refugee to this country and was elected to Congress on the basis of yelling at Americans about how terrible they are. Here she is explaining that Americans are just stupid. That's the big problem. That's why Trump was reelected. Not that she blew it, not that Mehdi Hasan blew it, not that the rest of the Democratic Party blew it. It's that Americans writ large are just dumb.
These people are just idiots. I really, I'm at the point where it's become really hard to have an intellectual debate with any of these people because the level of stupidity that they are displaying every single day is frankly embarrassing, not just in Congress, but as Americans. And the fact that these people are allowed to say just the most ridiculous things tells you that the dumbing of the United States has arrived, because how else do we get a Trump presidency again?
Yeah, it must be the stupidity. It can't be that you guys chose every wrong position as possible to take in American politics, and now the American people have rejected you. It can't be that at all. Okay, now, the perfect example of this came out yesterday, courtesy of our friend Chris Rufo, who's going to join the show in a moment and break some more news on this particular story. So, the job of the National Security Agency is to collect, analyze, and share intelligence to protect the United States from foreign enemies. That is the job of the intelligence community. As it turns out, it, like many other institutions in American government and American public life, has been honeycombed with leftist nonsense, absolute tripe, and in this case, perverse, disgusting, pornographic leftist tripe. According to Chris, quote, "We have cultivated sources within the NSA, one current employee and one former employee, who have provided chat logs from the NSA's Interlink messaging program. According to an NSA press official, all NSA employees sign agreements stating that publishing non-mission related material on Interlink is a usage violation and will result in disciplinary action. Nonetheless, these logs, dating back 2 years, are lurid, featuring wide-ranging discussions of polyamory and... Well, they're doing all these crazy things on taxpayer time. Right? This isn't them on their weird websites, like in their off hours. This is during their government employment using government networks. They're talking about their particular fetishes. And this is supposed to be part of the equity agenda, right? The equity agenda is to make sure that people who are sexually diverse staff the NSA. That's the important thing, not stopping foreign threats, not monitoring terrorist groups. The important thing is that weirdos who think that it's some sort of turn on to cut off their genitals can talk to one another. That is the most important thing at our institutions. Understand that for the left, our institutions are about reshaping the human beings who go into them and then using those reshaped human beings to reshape the United States of America. They are not about actually fulfilling the delegated functions of those institutions. The Department of Education is not about educating children. The Department of Education is about creating pipelines to left-wing interest groups that then reshape the nature of the American body politic. And apparently the NSA is about providing a safe space for people to discuss having their butthole zapped with lasers. I'm not even kidding. And then, presumably, being able to use their access to foreign intelligence and apparently domestic intelligence in order to target political enemies. According to Chris, one popular chat topic was male to female transgender surgery, which involves surgically removing the penis and turning it into an artificial vagina. Quote, "Mine is everything," said one male who claimed to have had gender reconstruction surgery. "I found that I like being penetrated. Never liked it before GRS, but all the rest is just as important as well." Another Intel official boasted that genital surgery allowed him to, quote, "wear leggings or bikinis without having to wear a gaff under it." These employees discussed hair removal, estrogen injections, and the experience of sexual pleasure post-castration. Quote, getting my butthole zapped by a laser was shocking, said one trans-identifying Intel employee who spent thousands on hair removal. Look, I just enjoy helping other people experience boobs, said another about estrogen treatment. One of the weirdest things that gives me euphoria is when I pee, I don't have to push anything down to make sure it aims right, said a Defense Intelligence Agency employee. Do you feel safer? Do you feel that your synagogue, church, school, public arena, now you're protected from the terrorists? Because after all, Defense Intelligence employees are very, very happy that they can sit when they pee safely. Very exciting stuff. Apparently, according to the sources, the chats were legitimized as part of the NSA's commitment to, quote, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Activists within the agency used LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign employee resource groups to turn their and pathologies into official work duties. According to the current NSA employee, these groups, quote, spent all day recruiting activists and holding meetings with titles such as privilege, ally awareness, pride, and transgender community inclusion. And the NSA leadership supported every aspect of this, declaring the DEI was, quote, not only mission critical, but mission imperative. Yes, the mission of the NSA, monitoring foreign terror threats. That mission would have been endangered if we did not have intelligent chats between various agents discussing the pleasures of polyamory. Quote, last January, chat room members discussed their practice of polyamory or ethical non-monogamy. One employee explained a polycule is a polyamorous group. A is my girlfriend and BG are her partners. And B and C are dating, but not C and D, nor E, F, or G with any of the others, though there are several MWB, metas with benefits, connections. Another employee claimed to be part of a 9-member polycule, adding, quote, some of our friends are practically polymers with all the connected compounds. Many of the conversations became particularly explicit. One former NSA source recalled being disgusted by a particularly shocking thread discussing weekend, quote, very exciting stuff happening inside the federal government. Really important and exciting stuff. Alrighty, in just 1 second, we're going to get to my interview with Chris Rufo himself. He's giving our listeners an exclusive on this insane NSA story. But first, obviously, the people who are monitoring everything that you do, you know, they're not always the best people. And during tax season, your sensitive information travels through countless hands and systems, from payroll to tax preparers to data centers, before it even reaches the IRS. Each stop is a potential vulnerability. Your W-2 contains exactly what identity thieves need to wreak havoc on your life. It's no surprise the IRS reported a 20% spike in tax-related identity theft last year. That is where LifeLock comes in. Their advanced system monitors millions of data points every second, catching threats you might miss on your own. And if the worst happens, well, LifeLock's U.S.-based restoration specialists have your back, supported by their $1 million protection package. They'll fix your stolen identity, guaranteed, or you get your money back. One of my producers, Jess, currently uses LifeLock. She's emphasized the peace of mind that comes with knowing that the experts are always monitoring her sensitive information for suspicious activity. Don't let identity thieves turn your tax season into their payday. Get the protection you need with LifeLock. Join right now. Save up to 40% off your first year of membership. Call 1-800-LifeLock and mention promo code Ben, or visit lifelock.com/Ben to save up to 40% today. Terms apply. That's 1-800-LifeLock and mention promo code Ben, or visit lifelock.com/Ben and save up to 40%. Also, Grand Canyon University, private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we're all endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with actual purpose. GCU will equip you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and help create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of September 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others? That's yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. There are so many other bad educational institutions that are out there that are going to corrupt you and wreck your life. Don't do that. Instead, head on over to GCU, Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu today. Well, joining us on the line to discuss is Chris Rufo, the predominant activist journalist of our time, also senior fellow and director of the Initiative on Critical Race Theory at the Manhattan Institute for more breaking news. So, Chris, you keep coming up with these scoops week after week, which suggests both you're very good at your job and also there's an enormous amount of trash happening at the federal governmental levels. We've been talking about the NSA and these horrifying secret chats in which they've been engaged, but We talked about that. I want to talk about a couple of new things that you're uncovering today with regard to talk at the NSA, which again is an agency designed specifically to target foreign enemies, about apparently domestic enemies, and yours truly comes up apparently.
That's absolutely right. I mean, these are intelligence officials that should, in theory, be focused on foreign adversaries, but they are very concerned about domestic politics. And so it's not just about their hormones, their genital surgeries. They have vitriolic feelings towards conservatives in particular. Two names that came up, of course, were Chaya Raichik of Libs of TikTok fame and the one and only Ben Shapiro. And they were going ballistic. I mean, they said at one point that you should be expelled for the tribe for constantly spouting hate speech. I'm not a rabbi. I don't know exactly how that works, but my impression is that the NSA does not have that power. That's something of an overreach, and it's frankly quite absurd.
So the CIA has already come out and said that they're going to look into this. What do you expect the outcome of this is going to be? I mean, the NSA has incredible powers to look into all sorts of information, foreign as well as domestic. We've had a bunch of scandals involving the NSA actually targeting people domestically before. What do you think is going to be the outcome of all of this?
Well, the Trump administration is very concerned about this. And just in the last few hours, I can tell you that I've had phone calls and signal messages from not only the NSA, but the CIA and the Director of National Intelligence Staff. And so they want to get to the bottom of this. I'm told that they're going to be taking significant action. And in my view, the standard should be quite simple. If you were at any private corporation, if you worked at Microsoft or you worked at Boeing or ExxonMobil, if you were doing this in the work chat, you would be packed up and gone within hours. The same standard should be applied here. And in fact, it should be even a more stringent standard, because revealing these personal details, these gory situations, not only is inappropriate at work, but it creates a counterintelligence vulnerability that we know China, Russia, Iran, and other countries would love to exploit.
So, Chris, one of the things that I think we need to focus in here on is the fact that this is, in fact, a reflection of bad policy. It's easy to go, well, yes, bad apples who have gotten involved in various chats with their anger at various conservatives. But there really is something else going on here, and that is that throughout our federal government, when Joe Biden said that equity was going to dictate all policy throughout these federal agencies, he was not joking. And that is reflected in this kind of insanity at the staffing level.
That's exactly right. And all of these chats that were extremely graphic in nature were legitimized and considered part of the DEI programs. And so the left wants to play this Mott and Bailey game, this hard debate, easy debate game, where they say, you have to protect people's identity. They just want to have trans people have the right to exist, all of these euphemisms that they use. But under the surface, this is what's happening in practice. And the Biden administration officials were either complicit or they were too afraid to actually shut this down. I'm told that under Tulsi Gabbard, these chats have been shut down. They aren't going to occur moving forward. But the problem is quite deep, because between the Obama administration and then the Biden administration, you have a huge sweep of time in which left-wing gender activists seemingly have hijacked not just Department of Education or Department of Environmental Protection, but in fact, the core agencies of our national security apparatus. This should be a 5-alarm fire for policymakers. It creates a huge vulnerability in addition to the simple ideological problems that are obvious to all.
I mean, it also includes the fact that when you have all of these radicals who are motivated to actually go after their enemies, and they have the tools to go after their enemies, the possibility of actual malfeasance using the tools of law enforcement starts to grow pretty exponentially.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, in theory, the NSA could listen to every phone call you make, could read every text message or email that you write. And in theory, this could be deployed by bad actors within the agency against domestic enemies. We know for a fact, because of these chat logs, that they have very clear enemies who are in American politics. They're unanimously conservative. And so I think that it is not beyond concern to fear that some of these tools could be deployed against domestic enemies. This is something that we should be on guard for. And certainly the new Director of National Intelligence has a lot of work ahead to clean up the agencies, to focus them back on mission, and frankly, to terminate the employment of people who are not advancing the national security, but seek to really use government resources to advance partisan politics.
Well, folks, Chris Rufo doing amazing work each and every week. You can check him out over at ChristopherRufo.com, or you can follow him over at RealChrisRufo at X.com as well. Chris, really appreciate the time as well as the breaking news.
Thank you.
Okay, so what does all of this mean in practical terms? Well, what it means is that Americans are not fond of their institutions. They believe their institutions are fundamentally broken. This is where the popularity of Doge comes in. It's not that Doge, as we discussed yesterday, is taking an actual chainsaw to government spending. They're not. The numbers are not all that high. I mean, the numbers are in the low billions, maybe the tens of billions, certainly not enough to transform the trajectory of American spending. But what Doge is doing is uncovering the rot at the center of so many of these institutions. That's why it's employee-based. That is why it is a targeting of particular employees in particular sectors, because the idea is that personnel make policy. If you don't like the policy, the best thing to do is to clean out the personnel. Here's President Trump explaining the popularity of Doge.
I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too. So, you know, we're doing a real job. And we just had a poll come out, I guess the Harvard poll, saying that it's massively popular what we're doing.
And of course, it is massively popular because Americans do not like this sort of crap. They understand that their taxpayer dollars, the things that they work hard all day to earn, are now being used to subsidize trans discussions at the NSA. They are not into this. They don't want this. They think that it is bad. And the Democrats are puzzled. Why would people think that's bad? That's just part and parcel of what government is for. Government is part of a transformative process directed at Americans' values. That is what government is. Government drives how Americans think about life. That is what the left believes. And they cannot believe that Americans are rejecting their entire worldview. That is what lies at the root of all of this. Not even differences on spending or government programs themselves. What lies behind all of this is a belief by Americans correctly that the value system of the left, which is defined by Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York, that value system is at odds with the value system held by most Americans, the vast majority of Americans. In fact, it's why so much of what President Trump is doing right now sounds simply commonsensical, and yet is being opposed every step of the way by radicals on the left. Perfect example is what's happening up in Maine. So up in Maine, the governor, Janet Mills, 77 years old, she has challenged President Trump's executive order relating to keeping men out of women's sports. Maine's Principal Association Executive Director Mike Burnham declared on February 7th that they would not comply in any way, shape, or form with the executive order from the White House that said men are not allowed in female sports. Instead, he said Maine would follow the Maine Human Rights Act when it comes to gender identity. Okay, then President Trump on February 20th was speaking to the Republican Governors Association meeting, and he said, Maine, I hate to tell you this, they're not going to get any federal money. If they want men in women's sports, they're just not going to get the cash. On February 21st, he had a gathering of all the governors, and he directly tore into Governor Mills in Maine.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with the state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
And he's right about this. He's right about this. This is an 80-20 issue. Americans do not believe that men should be competing in women's sports. But again, government is a tool of social transformation, according to the left. That's what it is for. It is an elite tool of social transformation. And if Americans don't like that, well, then Ilhan Omar will label Americans stupid. Well, President Trump is not going along with this. So the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights has now launched a Title IX investigation in Maine. And again, there are a bunch of these other investigations that are currently going on. And the governor of Maine refuses to back down. Quote, I've spent my career standing up for the rule of law in Maine and America. To me, that is fundamentally what is at stake here, the rule of law in our country. No president can withhold federal funding authorized and appropriated by Congress and paid for by Maine taxpayers in an attempt to coerce someone into compliance with his will. It is a violation of our Constitution and of our laws, which I took an oath to uphold. Okay, so this is going to go to court, presumably. But the idea that strings are attached to federal funding, that has a long, storied record in American politics going all the way back to federal dollars being attached with strings to, for example, raising the driving age in particular states, or getting rid of drunk driving in particular states. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, all this is just commonsensical, and the left opposes every bit of it. The same thing is true when it comes to illegal immigration. The truth is that there is, in the United States, a sort of wide consensus on illegal immigration. It's a consensus that I have been preaching for my entire political career, as far as I'm aware, which is shut the border, figure out what to do with the people here. Right? That's pretty much what it is. Shut the border, figure out what to do with the people here. And that means a lot of people are going to have to go. Most Americans are on board with that and always have been, right, left, and center. I'm old enough to remember a time when even Bernie Sanders was an immigration restrictionist because he understood well enough that actually you can't have an endless welfare state piled atop the back of an open border. Those two things do not go along with one another. In fact, actually, smart leftists all over the globe understand this. Perhaps the only reigning left-wing party in Europe right now is in Denmark. Very successful left-wing party. Why? Because they've maintained all of their socialist stances, except that they've gone hard right on immigration. They say we can't have a social welfare state with an open border. It's like saying free donuts and leaving the door wide open at the front of the store. Everyone's going to come in for a free donut. But the left in the United States has decided that they want both open borders and endless welfare. Well, now all of that is coming to a crashing halt. So, yesterday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced that there would be a raid near Houston at a place called Colony Ridge. And we've been reporting on this here at Daily Wire extensively for months, if not years at this point. Governor Abbott tweeted out, Colony Ridge is being targeted today. Texas DPS troopers and special agents are assisting Homeland Security investigations with an operation in Colony Ridge this morning. They are targeting criminals and illegal immigrants. I've worked with Tom Homan on this for months. Again, that is an unincorporated subdivision northeast of Houston that has basically become a haven for illegal immigration. Joining us on the line to discuss is Daily Wire investigative reporter Spencer Lindquist. So Spencer, why don't you give us the background on Colony Ridge? Why is this a big issue?
So Colony Ridge is a 60 square mile development that is set to reach a population of 250,000 people. That's larger than Scottsdale, Arizona, Knoxville, Tennessee, or Boise, Idaho. And the marketing and financial schemes at Colony Ridge are specifically designed to attract illegal aliens. We've seen illegal alien drug runners, suspected murderers, and cartel members. Just last night, there were these raids at Colony Ridge, and it resulted in a manhunt for a confirmed MS-13 member who'd been deported from the United States on 7 different occasions. He's connected to a fatal stabbing. These are the types of criminal illegal aliens that this financial and marketing scheme from Colony Ridge has rolled out the red carpet for. And it's forced an American community to deal with the consequences of higher crime, a flood of drugs, and an unrecognizable community, while the developers, John and Trey Harris, have pocketed millions upon millions of dollars.
So, Spencer, as the Daily Wire has reported, the Colony Ridge website is called Terrenos Houston, which advertises no credit needed, various payment options, access to water, electricity, and sewage, and it's been financed with legal loans where the home buyer doesn't actually need a social security number. So when we're talking about means that are used in order to attract illegal immigrants, I mean, this was all ready to go, basically.
Absolutely. There's a reason why so many of the illegal aliens caught at Colony Ridge have been previously deported. It's because they don't want to be deported again, and they've come under the understanding that Colony Ridge is a place where they can evade law enforcement. It's a place where illegal aliens have the red carpet rolled out for them again. And what we've seen actually is that we had a recent Daily Wire investigation where a different Texas developer, in a leaked email that we obtained, defended Colony Ridge and said that these businesses, Colony Ridge and others like it, would go under, they'd go out of business if they were forced to examine the creditworthiness of buyers and if they had to check for social security numbers of these buyers. So this is a business model that is built on selling out American land parcel by parcel, plat by plat, property by property to illegal aliens.
So, Spencer, what exactly changed here? Because obviously we've been covering this for a year and a half over at Daily Wire, and the state of Texas really didn't do a whole hell of a lot about it. At one point, the Texas State Attorney General, Ken Paxton, sued Colony Ridge, but there certainly weren't anything like the kinds of raids that we're now seeing under Governor Abbott. So what exactly changed?
Absolutely. No, you're right. We reported on this beginning in September of 2023. I was actually in a helicopter surveying this development and its rapid growth, and we've been reporting on it since. And a couple things changed. First off, there's been it's impossible to ignore the level of crime and the level of disorder in this area. And the Daily Wire has continuously put a spotlight on it. There's also one very simple change. The Trump administration entered office, and just 7 days afterwards, there were some deportation raids in Colony Ridge. And then, of course, we've seen what we saw yesterday, where these deportation raids have been ramped up to become significantly larger. So there is finally some action taken on this. But the reality is that for far too long, there has been an unholy alliance between the corporate interests that profit off of mass immigration and politicians that, when they don't have the spotlight on them, have been willing to look the other way. That consensus is over. We have brought a ton of light and transparency to this issue, and action is finally being taken.
Well, thank you, Spencer, for your hard work reporting on Colony Ridge. I'm glad to see that it's finally bearing some actual policy fruit, and we'll keep checking in with you as this progresses.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Well, the government is bad at a lot of things, but one thing that the government is great at is prying taxpayer dollars out of you. The IRS is ramping up its enforcement efforts in 2025, with April 15th approaching. Time is now running out. If you're facing back taxes or unfiled returns, delaying action only compounds the problem. Every day you wait makes your tax situation more difficult to resolve. Do not let another tax deadline pass you by. While taking immediate action is crucial, attempting to deal with the IRS alone, that can be a costly mistake. And this is where Tax Network USA's expertise becomes invaluable. What sets them apart? Well, unlike other tax resolution firms, Tax Network USA maintains privileged access to the IRS through their preferred direct channels. This means they know exactly which agents can help resolve your case effectively. Whether you owe 10 grand or 10 million bucks, their team of attorneys and negotiators brings proven strategies to settle your tax issues favorably. With over $1 billion in tax debt already resolved, they have the experience and the expertise to handle your situation. Talk with one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters, stop looking over your shoulder, protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Do not let the IRS control your future. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Shapiro. April 15th is just around the corner. Act now before the IRS acts first. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Shapiro. Also, what does the future hold for business? If you ask 9 experts, you will get 10 opinions. Bull market, bear market, inflation up or down. We need a crystal ball. Well, until we have one, over 38,000 businesses have found a way to future-proof their operations with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP. Imagine having your accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all seamlessly integrated into one fluid platform. That is NetSuite. With this unified business management suite, you're not just juggling numbers, you're wielding a powerful tool that gives you the visibility and control to make quick, informed decisions. It's like having a map in a maze of market uncertainties. Real-time insights, forecasting, check. It's like peering into the future with actionable data at your fingertips. And here is a game changer. You'll be closing your books in days, not weeks. That means less time drowning in paperwork, more time focusing on what actually matters, steering your business toward success. At the Daily Wire, we're proud to partner with NetSuite because they're leading the way in future-proofing operations for businesses around the world. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars, NetSuite adapts to your needs, helping you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/Shapiro. The guide is free to you at netsuite.com/Shapiro. That's netsuite.com/Shapiro. Meanwhile, chaos continues to reign in the media. It's hilarious to watch MSNBC have a full-scale meltdown over Joy Reid's departure. So MSNBC announced that Joy Reid, the least joyful person ever to be named Joy, would be ousted at MSNBC because her show was terrible and had no ratings. The readout had like 2 viewers, and probably one of them was just from our show, meaning that the right used the readout as more of a source than the American people used the readout. It was great. I enjoyed the readout because anytime I wanted sort of the apotheosis of the nut job left-wing perspective, Joy Reid was there. Well, Joy Reid has now been ousted. Joy Reid was weeping openly on the social medias over her own heroism after having been fired from MSNBC. Okay, lady, I'm sorry, MSNBC is the most left-wing network in America. If they fired you, it's because of ratings. It's not because they disagreed with your bizarro world left-wing principles. It's because you stink on air. But according to her, it's because she's been targeted by, wait for it, racism and sexism and all the rest.
In the end, where I really land and where I've landed on today is just gratitude, just pure gratitude, and gratitude not just because people would take the time to get on a call like this or to take care of me, but also that my show had value, and that that what I was doing had value.
Indeed. My cup overfloweth. It is a wonderful moment because she, of course, was a terrible host and a terrible person who believes terrible things and foments the ideas and actions of other terrible people. But what's hilarious about this is it has now led to a full-scale insurrection over at MSNBC, where the other DEI-aiming left-wing hosts came out from the woodwork to explain that they were very sad that Joy Reid was going. This included, of course, Rachel Maddow, who isn't sad enough to give up her $30 million a year salary at MSNBC or anything, but a little sad, you know?
In all of the jobs I have had, in all of the years I have been alive, there is no colleague for whom I have had more affection and more respect than Joy Reid. I love everything about her. I have learned so much from her. I have so much more to learn from her. I do not want to lose her as a colleague here at MSNBC. And personally, I think it is a bad mistake to let her walk out the door. It is not my call, and I understand that, but that's what I think. I will tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Fang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible.
Yes.
And I do not defend it.
Get him, Rachel. Do it. Yes. I'm here for it. Taking a brickbat to management while drawing a $30 million a year salary to now go back to a once-a-week Monday night spot. Rachel Maddow. Oh, love it. Just call them all racists. That's going to work out amazing for you. Left wing, you guys broke it and you bought it. And this is what happens. You wonder why Americans think that you are a bleep show? The reason they think you're a bleep show is because of this. It's because they look at how you run institutions, including your own, and they say, are you insane? So you run the NSA so the transgender identified people can talk about getting their buttholes zapped. And then you actually run a network called MSNBC. And at MSNBC, you can't hold it together between all of your extraordinarily left-wing, communist bordering hosts. You can't even hold it together there. So you fire Joy Reid for having no ratings. And then you fire a couple of other hosts. And now you've got Rachel Maddow, the face of your stupid organization, out there calling you racist. Love it. Enjoying it. By the way, anytime she wants, she can give up her show again for Joy Reid, presumably. I mean, she's a white lady. Sure, she's a lesbian, which gives her some, added affirmative action points. But she also is white, I noticed. And again, seems very happy to draw down that salary. This is why you guys lose. So you want to keep going down this path? Really, I encourage you to. I'm enjoying it. I think that it's really, really good. And meanwhile, the Trump administration is going up against the Associated Press. So the Associated Press has now sued the Trump administration because the administration said that they can't come on Air Force One. And the reason for that is because the Trump administration is mad at the AP for not renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. So they've barred AP reporters from the Oval Office, Air Force One, and other official White House events. And now the AP is filing a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia against Trump administration officials, including the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Taylor Budowich, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, and the White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. The complaint objects to the White House ordering the wire service to use specific words in its reporting and stated it had filed suit to, quote, vindicate its rights to the editorial independence guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. Now, the reality is that if the White House said the reason that you're ousted is because you won't say the things we want you to say, probably the White House loses in court on that because that would presumably be a First Amendment violation. What they actually should just say is, listen, we're not even going to give you a reason, right? The White House under Joe Biden didn't include any of the alternative media at all. And we're going to treat all media equally, which means the AP does not get a leg up on, say, the Daily Wire or Breitbart or Daily Caller or anybody else in the online media. However, if you want to lose the sort of momentum that Trump has, and this is, again, I'm concerned with this because I want to see President Trump victorious. Distractions are the enemy. Yesterday, Edward Martin, who's the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, he put out a statement, quote, as President Trump's lawyers, we are proud to fight to protect his leadership as our president, and we are vigilant in standing against entities like the AP that refuse to put America first. He put that out as like a full-on graphic statement. That is just conceding the actual legal case. Because if the case that you are making is that the media have to reflect the perspective of the president of the United States to be given access, you're going to lose in court. Also, it sounds rather tyrannical and stupid. There is no reason to do that sort of stuff. The important thing is to continue pushing forward where common sense ought to prevail. This is the mandate. The mandate is common sense. The mandate is to stand against the Ilhan Omars and the insane employees at the NSA and the nut job, whack jobs over at MSNBC. That's the mandate. That is them. And anytime the Trump administration strays from that mandate, they will get less popular. And anytime they fulfill that mandate, they will get more popular. It is, in fact, that simple. In just a moment, I'm going to get to the economic risks facing the United States. Plus, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, visited the White House yesterday. First, this is one you don't want to miss. Tuesday, March 4th, President Trump is addressing a joint session of Congress at 9 p.m. Eastern, laying out his America First vision, tackling immigration reform, economic revival, and national security. And you know we're not going to sit this one out. Join us for Backstage Live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, our pre-show breakdown with me, Matt, Knowles, Clavin, Jeremy. Then we'll watch the entire speech together live at Daily Wire Plus. And when Trump is done, we're back with unfiltered, no BS reactions you're not going to get anywhere else. This is the event shaping America's future, so be there or be square. Watch it all live on Daily Wire Plus next Tuesday night. Subscribe right now at dailywire.com. Meanwhile, if we're talking about threats to the Trump administration, obviously the economy ranks at the top of the list. The economy right now is chugging along. As we discussed yesterday, the inflation rate is too high, and disproportionately, the economy is consumer-based. It needs to be investment-based. The question is, what are the awesome new inventions that are going to drive prices down and drive productivity up? Those are the things we ought to be focused on. It is also worthwhile noting that America's national debt is reliant on the continued usage of the American dollar as the currency for nearly all foreign trade and used in international denomination. That is the thing that allows us to continue selling our debt into the markets, so that people want the U.S. dollar and use the U.S. dollar. One way to drive that down is, for example, giant trade wars. Giant trade wars lead people to invest away from the American dollar and instead try to form their own trade coalitions. This is why the economic policy of the United States right now must be focused on deregulation, it must be focused on cutting taxes, and it must be focused on actually exacerbating and increasing trade with our allies. I'm very much in favor of tariffing China. I think China's an enemy that is going to have an economic impact on the United States. And that's going to have to be offset by increased trade with other parts of the globe. Well, President Trump right now seems to be pursuing more tariff policy. Again, if Trump is using tariff policy as a lever, I'm totally fine with it. If he's using it to force other countries to make concessions in particular areas that then leads us to relower our tariffs, that's good. If the idea is that tariffs are in and of themselves of benefit to the United States consumers and investors, that isn't true. Here's President Trump yesterday on tariffs.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools, because anybody that would sign documents like they signed, where they were able to take advantage of the American people, like has happened over the last long period of time, except for a little 4-year period that took place 4 years ago. But anybody that would agree to allow this to happen to our country should be ashamed of themselves. No, the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule.
Okay, well, I mean, again, I'm hoping that this is a leverage play rather than a principled play in favor of tariff policy. Tariff policy is an excellent way of undermining the credibility of the American dollar on foreign markets, and it is also an excellent way of increasing prices in the middle of an inflationary spiral that has been several years long at this point. President Trump's number one threat, the threat to Trump right now, is some sort of economic recession. It is to every president. It's not just unique to President Trump. And the truth is that President Biden left Trump with a rather hard hand to play. He left him with an inflationary economy that, as we discussed yesterday, is inflationary in the stock market, it's inflationary in real estate. There's a reason Warren Buffett is holding out his cash right now. So that is a hard hand to play, and President Trump does need to play that well. Okay, meanwhile, on the foreign front, lots of controversy yesterday over the war in Ukraine. So a couple of things happened with regard to Ukraine. One was the UN attempted to push yet another resolution condemning Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. Now, number one, that was always going to get vetoed by Russia in the Security Council, obviously, because when it comes to the Security Council, Russia's on it. They're going to veto it. So this was not a Security Council resolution. Those are the only binding resolutions from the United Nations. Instead, it was a general resolution that was designed to demonstrate kind of worldwide condemnation of Russia invading Ukraine. The question is, what's the purpose of that? Like, seriously, what's the goal? The UN General Assembly puts out a wide variety of such condemnatory measures, and none of them ever have any impact because the UN is a terrible organization that should be burned down and the ground salted. The United States should just withdraw from the UN. It's trash. The UN has always been trash. It is trash today. It is a waste of money. It invests the international community with a moral credibility it has never had. But it is leading a lot of people to be very upset with the Trump administration because the Trump administration voted against that UN resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to Barack Ravid, stenographer for Democrats, the U.S. sided against this resolution, instead siding with Moscow and other non-democratic countries like North Korea, Belarus, and Sudan. Now, to be real, the actual breakdown is that 65 member states, including both China and Iran, abstained from the vote. 93 member states voted in favor, including much of the EU. 18 countries voted against the resolution. This also controversially included Israel. And people are like, why is Israel voting against a resolution condemning Russia? Again, there are a couple of reasons. One, Ukraine has voted in favor of every single General Assembly resolution condemning Israel. So Israel's like, why? You want us to stay? We're not. No. That's one. And two, it turns out that Israel actually has to deal with Russian presence in the Middle East. And this is the thing about the UN. It's all virtue signaling crap. The UN is constantly passing resolutions that virtue signal, and very often virtue signal in the wrong direction, condemning the United States or condemning Israel or condemning European allies, condemning whatever a majority of the General Assembly wishes to condemn. Does any of this foment actual peace in Ukraine? Does a UN General Assembly resolution where the United States votes in favor of the idea that Russia was bad, does that make peace more likely? I'm just struggling to see how. Even if I agree with the general principle, I'm struggling to see how this is useful. It's the equivalent of Michael Scott wandering into the middle of the office and shouting that he's declaring bankruptcy. Who cares what the UN General Assembly says, that useless, terrible organization? But it's leading to all sorts of consternation. How could the United States not vote in favor? All right, if you want to burn the midnight oil, freaking out about that, go for it. But it's not going to change any of the underlying facts on the ground in Ukraine. So President Trump had a joint press conference with Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. Yesterday was a bit awkward, obviously. President Trump talked about his policy in Ukraine. He says, I ran against the foreign policy establishment.
My administration is making a decisive break with the foreign policy failures of the past administration and, frankly, the past. I ran against a very foolish foreign policy establishment, and their recklessness has led to the death of many, many people.
Okay, he is not wrong about that. And then Trump was asked whether Vladimir Putin was a dictator. This, of course, came in the aftermath of Trump suggesting that Vladimir Zelensky was a dictator. Here was President Trump's answer.
If you call Zelensky a dictator, would you use the same words regarding Putin?
I don't use those words lightly. I think that we're going to see how it all works out. Let's see what happens. I think we have a chance of a really good settlement between various countries. And, you're talking about Europe, and you're talking about Ukraine as part of that whole situation. The other side has a lot of support also. So let's see how it all works out. It might work out. Look, you can never make up lives. The one thing you can make up the money, but you can't make up the lives. A lot of lives lost. I think probably a lot more lives than people are talking about. It's been a rough war, but I think we're close to getting it solved.
Okay, so there's Trump basically saying, I'm not going to rhetorically get into a fight over labeling Vladimir Putin a dictator or anything like that, because what's the point of that? Now, again, I wish he had not labeled Vladimir Zelensky a dictator, because it's hard to say I take these terms very seriously after labeling Zelensky a dictator, but not Putin. That removes all meaning from the word dictator, obviously. But Trump's entire approach here is, I'm not really going to get into these sort of rhetorical games calling Russia names because it doesn't actually drive forward the process. Trump said he would be meeting with Vladimir Zelensky in the near future. Here he was.
I will be meeting with President Zelensky. In fact, he may come in this week or next week to sign the agreement, and which would be nice. I'd love to meet him. Would meet at the Oval Office. So the agreement's being worked on now. They're very close to a final deal. It'll be a deal with rare earths and various other things, and he would like to come, as I understand it, here to sign it, and that would be great with me. I think they then have to get it approved by their council or whoever might approve it, but I'm sure that will happen.
Okay, President Trump also talked up his partnership with France. Macron was sitting here kind of awkwardly during the entire process. There's one picture that went rather viral in Europe, actually, of Trump sitting at the Resolute desk, and J.D. Vance was sitting to one side, Trump was sitting in the center, and Macron was kind of like bunched up in the corner of the Resolute desk. And this is something President Trump likes to do imagistically. But here he was talking up the partnership with France.
France is America's oldest ally. Our cherished partnership has been a force for freedom, prosperity, and peace from the very beginning. We're now working on some very interesting developments. One in particular, as you know, the war between Russia and Ukraine. In the American Revolution, French support helped us to seize our destiny as an independent nation. In the First and Second World Wars, our citizens shed blood together on the battlefields of Europe. And I'll never forget joining President Macron 6 years ago on the 75th anniversary of D-Day. That was some day. The purpose of our meeting today is to end another battle, a really horrible one, a war.
Okay, so then Macron took center stage. And here's the thing about what Macron was saying. And here's, I think, one of the central pieces of Trump's actual strategy with regard to Ukraine. He's saying to the Europeans, listen, you want more done there? Great, do it. The combined EU economy is 10 times the size of the Russian economy. So if you want to do it, then cool. Do it. Like, step up and do the thing. Your words of condemnation are much less useful than actual activity. And so Macron is now coming to the table and he's saying, we know we need to do more.
We are also well aware that Europeans need to do more for security in Europe, for defense in Europe, and to more fairly share the security burden that your country's been carrying for so many years. Mr. President, you know how much friendship I show towards you and I have towards you since your first term. Europe is very clear-eyed about this. We know what we need to do as Europeans, given the threats surrounding us and the responsibilities that we must shoulder.
Now, Macron reiterated that Ukraine is not going to come to the table unless they get some sort of serious security guarantees, which of course is absolutely true. Now, the Russians are taking the absolutely untenable position there can be no European peacekeepers on the border. Instead, they want like Brazilians or Chinese. That's not going to happen. Ukraine won't sign on to anything that basically ensures that Russia 3 years from now decides to reinvade. Here's Macron making this clear.
We had lengthy discussions with the president, and we spoke about our desire to bring an end to conflicts, to have a truce that is measurable, verifiable, and that enables negotiation of a lasting peace, where we will discuss not only Ukraine's reconstruction, its territories, but also the security guarantees, meaning maintaining peace over the long term. As I said to the president, we've experienced peace accords that were only ceasefires without ensuring security guarantees, Minsk 1 and 2. And we want to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Okay, Macron also had a bit of a tete-a-tete moment with President Trump. Trump was claiming, falsely, that the EU is being reimbursed for all of its spending in Ukraine, while the United States is somehow not being reimbursed for all of its spending in Ukraine. Macron stepped in and corrected him.
Just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear, okay. We have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it to us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day and Russia will have paid for that.
If you believe that, it's okay with me.
Not Trump. Okay, well, here's the thing. Despite all of the talk and the loose talk and many things that are said that I disagree with, obviously, from the Trump administration, things are moving toward an actual settlement in Ukraine. According to the New York Times, Ukraine and the United States are closing in on an agreement that would grant Washington a share of Kyiv's revenues from natural resources, according to both President Trump and a Ukrainian government official. Trump said Zelensky would come to the White House to sign the agreement. Earlier in the day, Ukraine's deputy prime minister, a person named Olha Stefanishyna, posted on X that Ukrainian and U.S. teams are in the final stages of negotiations regarding the minerals agreement. Now, of course, this is something that President Trump is very big on, is the idea that if we spend in another country, we ought to get something back. It would always so be good for Ukraine, for the United States, to actually be involved in the raw minerals deal with Ukraine, the rare earths minerals that we're talking about here. According to a draft obtained by Axios, the U.S. and Ukraine are closing in on a minerals agreement worth hundreds of billions of dollars, under which the United States would express its desire to keep Ukraine free, sovereign, and secure, according to a draft obtained by Axios. So, again, it appears that Trump's approach is going to actually bear fruit here. And meanwhile, Europe is going to stand up on its own 2 feet. In fact, in Germany, the future German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who just won the last election in Germany, he came in first place with about 29% of the vote. The AfD, which is the so-called far-right party, came in with about 21% of the vote. And the Social Democrats dropped down to like 14% of the vote. Merz said that his goal was to do, quote, everything in my power to conserve this good transatlantic relationship with the United States. But he says signals make clear that Washington's interest in engaging with Europe is dwindling, and suggested that it was time for Germany to take a front row seat with regard to steering policy in Europe, which of course is something that President Trump agrees with. So it seems that President Trump's goals are in fact coming to pass. These are all things that are happening that President Trump is pushing. And so whether you like his rhetorical approach, whether you don't like his rhetorical approach, the proof is going to be in the pudding. And if the actual end game here is a rare earths minerals deal with the United States, in which the United States is basically providing security guarantees to Ukraine, along with our European partners, who are the ones actually putting soldiers on the ground in Ukraine to preserve the peace, if that's the way this goes, that's just a win. It's just a win. And as I've said for a very long time, President Trump is very much invested in simply winning. All right, in just a moment, we're going to get to other news, including Vivek Ramaswamy announcing for Ohio governor. Kathleen Kennedy is going to be out, apparently, in the Star Wars universe. It's only like years and years and years beyond time. First, you actually have to become a member over at DW. And of course, we have all sorts of our own wonderful content, ranging from our amazing documentaries to all access with me to all of the other behind the scenes content that we do. You're going to want all of it. Become a member, use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.